What if I told you that a boy who was mocked for being too young, too reckless, too impossible to take seriously, would go on to conquer the known world before he turned 30s? Would you believe me? This is the story of Alexander the Great. And by the time you finish hearing it, I want you to ask yourself one question. What excuse are you still holding on to? Alexander was born a prince, yes, but privilege didn't hand him greatness. It handed him a target. Every enemy of his father wanted him dead before he ever sat on a throne. Every rival kingdom watched him, waiting for him to fail. At the age of just 16, while his father was away at war, Alexander was left in charge of an entire kingdom. 16 years old. Think about that for a second. What were you doing at 16? Most of us were worrying about exams, about fitting in, about what people thought of us. Alexander was defending a nation. Here is a question worth sitting with. Have you ever been given a responsibility that felt too big for you? Something where everyone around you doubted whether you could handle it? That's exactly where Alexander stood. And instead of shrinking from it, he grew into it. At 20 years old, his father was assassinated, and suddenly the entire kingdom of Macedonia rested on his shoulders. The generals who had fought beside his father didn't trust him. Neighboring kingdoms saw this as the perfect moment to invade, believing a 20-year-old couldn't possibly hold an empire together. They were wrong. Within 2 years, Alexander had crushed every rebellion, silenced every doubter, and turned his father's kingdom into the foundation of something far greater. So here asks another question. How many times have people underestimated you because of your age, your baccalaureate round, your lack of experience, and how many times did you let their doubt become your own? Alexander refused to do that. He looked at the map of the known world and didn't see boundaries, he saw possibilities. He crossed into Persia, an empire 10 times the size of his own, with an army that was outnumbered again and again. At the Battle of Gaugamela, his forces were outnumbered by some estimates 5 to 1. 5 to 1. Most commanders would have retreated. Most people facing odds like that in their own lives quietly convince themselves that the fight isn't worth it, that maybe it is smarter to play it safe. But ask yourself this: what would you attempt in your own life if you knew failure wasn't the end of the story, but just a chapter in it? Alexander didn't fight to avoid losing. He fought because he had already decided in his mind that retreating wasn't an option worth considering. And he won. He didn't just win, he shattered the largest empire on earth at the time, becoming ruler of Persia, Egypt, and lands stretching all the way to India. Now here is where the story gets even more interesting, because greatness isn't just about winning battles. It is about what you do with the power once you have it. Alexander didn't just conquer the cities he took. He studied them. He respected the cultures he encountered instead of erasing them. He married into local royalty, adopted local customs, and blended civilizations together in a way the ancient world had never seen. He built over 20 cities, many of which still exist today, named Alexandria, spreading learning, trade, and ideas across 3 continents. Here is a question that matters more than any battle he ever fought. What are you building with the influence you already have, no matter how small it feels right now? Because greatness isn't reserved for kings. It is available to anyone who refuses to stop at good enough. Alexander marched his army for over 11 years, covering more than 20,000 miles on foot and horseback through deserts, mountains, and unknown lands. His men grew tired. They grew afraid. At one point, in India, his own soldiers refused to go any further. They had been fighting for over a decade, and they simply couldn't imagine pushing forward into the unknown one more time. And Alexander, for the first time in his life, had to face something he had never faced on a battlefield: the limits of the people around him. Ask yourself, have you ever been the only one still willing to push forward while everyone around you wanted to stop? That kind of loneliness is one of the hardest parts of pursuing something great. Alexander eventually turned back, not because he wanted to, but because he understood that leadership means knowing when the people beside you have given everything they have. He died at just 32 years old, having built one of the largest empires in human history, spanning over 2 million square miles. Historians still debate exactly how he died: fever, poison, exhaustion from years of relentless conquest. But what nobody debates is this: a night lifespan shorter than most people's college years and career combined. He reshaped the entire known world. So here asks the biggest question of all: if a 32-year-old could build an empire spanning 3 continents before his life ended, what exactly is your excuse for waiting? Maybe you were telling yourself you were too young, like the generals who doubted a 20-year-old king. Maybe you were telling yourself the odds are against you, like the armies who faced 5-1 odds at Gaugamela and still found a way to fight. Maybe you're telling yourself you don't have enough experience, enough resources, enough connections. But neither did he. What Alexander had wasn't perfect circumstances, it was an unwillingness to let fear write the final chapter of his story before he even tried. Think about your own life right now. What is the version of Persia you've been avoiding because it looks too big, too far, too impossible? What is the risk you've been putting off because everyone around you says it is unrealistic? Alexander didn't he wait for the perfect army, the perfect moment, or everyone's approval. He moved forward with what he had, and he adjusted along the way. You don't need to conquer continents to apply this lesson. You need to stop conquering yourself with doubt. Every day you spend convincing yourself that you are not ready is a day that will never come back. Alexander wasn't he ready either, not at 16, not at 20, not when he crossed into Persia against impossible odds. He became ready by moving, not by waiting. So ask yourself this one last time: years from now, when you look back at this exact moment, will you be proud of what you built? Or will you remember this as the day you talked yourself out of trying? The empire you're capable of building starts with a single decision, not perfect confidence, not guaranteed success, just the willingness to take the next step anyway. Alexander the Great didn't he become legendary because he never doubted himself? He became legendary because he refused to let that doubt be the final word. What will you refuse to let stop you today?